Hi, it's Michelle from 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop, and today we're going to be talking about vellum. We have so many colors of translucent vellum in our shop, and I am guessing we have probably one of the largest selections. We have lots and lots of colors. This isn't even all of them. This is just a selection I pulled out. So if you're not familiar with vellum, vellum is a translucent paper that you can see through, and it has kind of a really smooth, almost like glassine finish. It's typically pretty delicate. Ours are just a bit heavier weight than normal vellum so that it's not quite so delicate and so that it cuts well if you have a Cricut or silhouette or want to die cut it. We have basic colors, and then we also have a few that come in shimmer. I think we have white, gold, and then lavender, I believe, in shimmer. So lots of different options. Today I'm going to show you 5 fun ways to use vellum on handmade cards. We're going to actually be making some projects too. So let's go ahead and jump right in with idea number 1 is to use vellum to soften busy patterned papers. Design team member Kate recently did a post where she showed how she uses die cut shapes out of vellum and mounts that over the top of her busy patterned paper so that she can put die cuts over it, and it just kind of softens the look and makes the die cuts stand out more. So we're going to do kind of the same thing today. I've got this panel card that has an open window in it. Now this pattern paper I just absolutely love. In fact, I've been hoarding it, and I'll link it down below in the description, but you can see that this is beautiful just like this. I could put my butterfly on here, mount the whole thing, and it's gorgeous. The pattern paper peeking through is beautiful. But if I use vellum to kind of soften that look, now it gives a whole different vibe to the card. It just really makes it kind of magical and elegant, and it's really beautiful. You can see that pattern behind it. So that's idea number 1, and you can use this in many different ways. So to finish off this card, let me just go ahead and assemble this. I'm going to mount the pattern paper behind, and then I'm going to put my vellum on the back of my little window here. All right, so by mounting that on the back, now I can use some foam tape, and it's going to look really cool when we turn it over because we've not only got the vellum to soften the look, but we've got a little bit of distance between the pattern paper and the vellum, which is going to make it look really cool. All right, so you can see how you can see that pattern in the background, but it's not super bold and bright. So now I'm just going to take my little butterfly cutout. This is our white opal glitter luxe. I'm just going to fold in the butterfly wings to give a little bit of dimension, and I'm going to place some adhesive right here in the center. And I'm going to fold my vellum butterfly wings as well. Now, when you're adhering vellum to anything, the glue will show through. So just be aware of that, and you kind of have to just be okay with it. Sometimes you can strategically place things over the top to cover up the glue. In this case, where I've put it just down the center, you're not even really going to see it because there's a shadow there, and so you don't even notice it. So I'm going to do that, and then I think I'm just trying to decide if I should pop my butterfly up. I think I have enough dimension. I'm going to go ahead and just apply glue here on the back. Get my butterfly positioned. But you can see how beautiful that is and how it just kind of really softens the whole card. Let's go ahead and finish this off with a few little embellishments. I'm going to use these little pearl kits that we sell. This is Flamingo is the color. So I like to just put my dabs of glue right on my surface, and I try to do as small as I can because I really don't want globs of glue sticking out. And then I just grab these with tweezers. And place them down. So that is card number 1, just an idea of how you can use vellum to soften pattern papers that you love, but maybe they're just a bit too busy for your project. All right, idea number 2 is to use vellum in your die cuts. And it looks especially beautiful when you layer it with traditional cardstock. So in this example here, you can see I have the exact same design cut out from tea green Encore cardstock and also tea green vellum. When you layer those, it just looks really beautiful. It's kind of the same image, but it just looks different. And it's just really a beautiful way to use vellum. So that's one example. I've used it on this Easter card. Here's another example. This is a spring banner, and you can see I did the same thing here. I've got the cardstock and then a different design cut out of the vellum, and they're just layered there together, and the vellum layer just looks super pretty. So that's idea number 2, use vellum for your die cuts. Now we're going to kind of do level 2 here, and we're going to ink the background of this, and then I cut this cool rose pattern out of vellum, so it is a little bit see-through. We're going to use some ink to decorate the back of our card here, and then layer that on. So let me grab a piece of scratch paper so I don't make a mess on my desk. And we're going to do the ink smushing technique. So for this technique, you're going to want to grab some sort of acetate or anything that has a plasticky smooth surface. I actually like to just use Cricut mat covers. I think those work really good. And if you've got your Cricut, if you're using a Cricut matte paper or even a piece of acetate, just kind of cut it down into a manageable size. Okay, I don't know if you can see that, but I cut it into a little square. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some Distress Oxide inks. We're going to do some ink smushing. We're basically going to build a background to stamp on this card, and then we'll layer our vellum rose over the top. So this is how this works. I'm going to use some of our brand new ultra heavyweight cardstock. This is not as thick as chipboard. It's definitely thinner than chipboard, but it's heavier than like Basel card shop. We have heavyweight cardstock that's about 100 pounds. This is ultra heavyweight, and I think it's like 140. So it's nice and sturdy. And I love this cardstock for ink projects like this because it won't buckle because it's so heavyweight. So that's what we're going to use to stamp on. Now I'm just going to take 2 contrasting colors. So I've got Festive Berries and Tattered Rose. So we're going to start off with our lightest color, which is Tattered Rose. And I am going to just make kind of a circular motion. If you just pounce this down, you're going to get a square, which isn't really what we want. We want more of an abstract look because we're trying to mimic kind of the background of the rose. We don't want a square. We want something that's a little bit daintier. But honestly, we're going to spritz it with water and it will change its shape anyways, so just do your best. Okay, now I'm going to grab a little misting bottle. You could just flick water on it or however you want to do it, but I'm going to just spray this. Because this is Distress Oxide, you'll see it starts to move around and kind of get splotchy looking. I'm going to leave this laying down and I'm going to press my paper into this. I'm going to see what it looks like when we pull it up. So I'm just going to pounce, push, kind of smush, peel it away, and you can see I get that cool background. Now that will dry. It's going to take just a minute, but that's fine. So I'm going to wipe this off. Now we're going to try to do a little bit of green here, kind of where the stem would be. So I'm using Rustic Wilderness for my color. This one, because it's a stem, I want it to be kind of long. So I'm going to just run my edge of my stamp pad and kind of make a line like that. Then I'm going to spray it. Oops. Let it kind of run a little bit. All right. Now we're going to push the base. We're going to push the bottom of the card into this like that. Peel it away. All right. We've got a cool watercolor effect. So I am just going to let this sit until it's dry before moving on. Now that this has had time to dry, we're going to go ahead and finish off our card. So this is all dry. And I'm going to go ahead and layer my vellum rose onto the card. Now this is some of our shimmer vellum, so I don't know if you can see that, but it's got kind of a a shimmer finish on the white. It's hard to see it, but so I'm gonna go ahead and glue this pretty strategically. Like I said, the glue is gonna show through the vellum, so I'm gonna use tiny, tiny little amounts of glue to try to keep it from showing. And I think it'll be just fine. This Barely Arts Precision Glue has this precision tip, which makes it pretty easy to get tiny little details. So we're just gonna place that down, push it down. All right, that's beautiful. It's just really subtle on the background. Now I'm gonna go ahead and get my sentiment on here. So this says best wishes, and my wishes word is all separate pieces. So let's get this on here. Again, I'm using this Barely Art Precision Glue because I can glue down really small things. Okay, now let's go ahead and mount this. This is our rose matte foil. It's just beautiful. So I think I'm gonna pop that up just a bit off the card with some foam dots. And then I'm gonna mount the whole thing on a piece of dotted Swiss salt cardstock. It's got that cool embossed dot texture. All right, now here is a little bonus tip with vellum. Former design team member Pam did this cool technique where she made a whole card using vellum circles. Now you can use these like confetti and just place them on here, but watch what happens when you overlap them. It gives you this really cool kind of artistic look because you can, it's doubling up the translucent layers and it just looks really cool. So let's go ahead and add a few of these. Whoops. Okay, I think I'm gonna go with that. I could sit here and mess with it forever, but really, it doesn't matter. All right, so that is idea number 2, that really pretty watercolor background and the subtle pattern of that rose. Okay, idea number 3 is embossing and coloring on vellum. You can see here I've just taken a piece of our white vellum. I stamped my butterfly stamp with a Versamark pad and heat embossed it with white embossing powder. So this is embossed, it's not gonna come off at all. So this is the embossed part, and you can do this on white and then color it, or you could just do it on a colored one. So here's like some little pink ones. This would look really pretty as well. Whatever you want, you can just save yourself the step of coloring, go with a colored vellum or choose white. If you're gonna use white, this is kind of, I guess I'd say a stained glass look. So what you do is you actually color on the back, and then the color, because of the vellum, the color is a lot more subtle and it shows through, and you don't have to worry about perfection coloring because the embossing lines kind of cover it up. So I always like to flip it over and just test my colors first and make sure that I like what I've chosen, because they're going to be a lot more subtle when it's showing through the vellum. So I'm just making myself a little swatch here to make sure that I like the colors. Okay, so let's flip it over and see what we think. So I like that. I think the green hardly shows up, so maybe I'll grab a darker green. I don't know, I guess I kind of like the fainter green. Let's see how it looks on what the background's gonna be. Yep, I'm gonna go back to the original lighter colored one. Now that I've decided on my colors, I'm just gonna flip this over and I'm gonna just begin coloring in the little butterfly parts. Now it's probably hard to see this because it's white on white, but this butterfly has all these little butterfly wing sections. So if you're doing this technique, it looks really cool when you choose something that kind of has lined partitions, almost like stained glass. It really makes it easy to color the little sections, and it looks cool when you flip it over. I'm just trying my best to kind of stay in the lines of the stamps. And it looks messy on the back, but when you flip it over, the embossed lines cover up the messiness. And all you'll see is the colored windows. Did I get everything? I think so. Okay, so when you flip it over, you just see this pretty stained glass effect. So I'm gonna go ahead and color some more of my butterflies, and then we'll cut them out and finish the card. All right, so I've finished coloring 3 of my butterflies, and I'm just gonna go ahead and cut them out. Do you guys hate cutting stuff out? Honestly, it's so soothing. I could just sit and cut stuff out for hours. I mean, luckily I have a Cricut, so I don't have to, but I do not mind cutting stuff out. I know some people hate cutting stamps out, but it doesn't bother me at all. All right, I've got my little butterflies cut out. These stained glass ones are just so pretty. So let's move on to assembling our card. So this just is beautiful enough to stand alone. Oops, I grabbed the wrong stuff. This is just beautiful enough to stand on its own. We're gonna just layer it up and add a few more embellishments to make a simple card. I've got a piece of our white wood grain cardstock. It's got that wood grain texture. Then I grabbed a piece of our matte gold encore foil paper. And then this is that same paper we used before, it's just the reverse side of it. So let's go ahead and layer this up. I'm gonna put some foam. I like to use foam between my layers, especially when I've got a layer of gold in there or like glitter or something that's kind of special, because the extra foam layer really adds the dimension, and the shadow on the specialty paper just looks so cool and really shows it off. So if you're going to use a specialty paper, you might as well show it off, right? Okay, so I'm going to mat this on my gold. And then this whole thing is going to be adhered to my larger card base. All right, and then I've cut out misuse sentiment out of the same gold matte foil, and I've mounted it on a circle of our opal glitter lux. So I'm going to add that to the card as well. Let's go ahead and pop this up with foam too. I have a real problem because I love foam tape, and so my cards get so thick that it's hard to mail them. So I usually just give my cards out in person because I can't control my foam usage. Okay, so we've got that mounted there, and then we've got 3 little butterflies to add to the card. Now I'm going to go ahead and fold their wings just a little. All right, so what do you think? Should we do like that? Or should we line them up in a row? I'm undecided. What do you think? I wish you could vote. All right, I think we're gonna do that. Let's do that. All right, let's grab some of our pearls. Maybe we'll add a few of these as well. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get these adhered down. I like my gems to look really random, almost like I just threw them on the card, but in reality, I'm too much of a control freak to just throw them on the card. So I purposely position them out so that they look random, but it is purposeful. I want them to look like they're just scattered on the card, but I want them to also be exactly like I want them. All right, so I've got my gems on there. We've got our little stained glass butterflies, and that is idea number 3. Okay, idea number 4 is to use vellum for shaker cards. So if you're familiar with a traditional shaker card, usually there's an acetate window. So you can see this part of the shaker, this part of the card is a shaker. So there's an acetate window that the shakers show through. But when you use vellum, you get a really cool look. Just like how we like made the pattern paper more subtle, you make your shakers more subtle. So take a look at this card. This is a shaker card as well, but you can see the shakers are behind vellum, and so it really like gives it a classy look and makes everything a lot more subtle. So we're going to learn how to make, this is a full panel shaker, so that's what I'm going to teach you today. And these are fun because you can put different things in them, and big shapes look cool. Like a big shape in a traditional shaker might not look that cool, but when it's behind vellum, it looks really awesome. So let's go ahead and I'll show you how to make this full panel shaker. So the first thing we're going to do is cut a card panel. This is A2 size, so it's 4 1/4 across and 5 1/2 tall. And then we're going to cut a panel that matches that exactly. This is going to be what our shaker goes, like the base of our shaker. And then we're also gonna, you don't have to do this. I cut like a frame layer as well that will kind of frame that shaker. So after you've got your panel, you're going to cut a piece of vellum that is 1/2 inch bigger. And when you lay it on here, you basically are getting 1/4 of an inch on each side. It's got some wiggle room there on each side. So position it as best you can so that it's centered. And then we're going to take some scissors. We're just going to snip from the corner of the vellum to the edge of the cardstock. Just try to keep it as even as you can. And that just makes it so that you can fold your edges over like that. Now the other thing about these full panel shakers is that typically on a normal shaker card you're using foam to get some dimension. These ones are intended to be really tight up against the background, so there's not a ton of room for shaker elements in it, and it just, that way, the reason for that is that if it was deeper, like if there was more depth, you wouldn't really be able to see your stuff because of the opaqueness of the vellum. So it, like this one, you can see there's no foam layer, and that way you can see all the good contents inside really easily. Okay, so we've got our panel just like that. Now we're going to place glue all the way around, and I'm putting glue on every single bit of that because it needs to catch and capture everything inside. If there's gaps, then all your glitter will fall out. And we're going to adhere 3 sides and leave one of the sides open. I'm just making sure I'm pressing down really good to make sure that that's firmly adhered. You're going to have some little edges, and you just snip those off. Okay, so now you can see we've basically created a little pocket that we can put our shaker elements in. So let's see, what should I put in here? I have some little confetti hearts cut out of holographic paper. I'm going to put those in there. I have some cut out butterflies just out of cardstock, but again, like the shadowing, they will look really pretty in there too. So I'm going to tuck those in there. And I'm going to grab some sequins. Now you want to get a good mix of items in there, because if you're just putting cardstock in there, you won't get that good shakety sound. So I like to definitely use cardstock shapes so that you get the shadowing, but put some stuff in there that's got a bit of shaker weight. And my go-to is a chunky glitter like this, or I like to use seed beads too. You can hear that's some good shake. So I'm gonna just throw a few of those in here. And now is when it will test the capacity of your gluing, because things will start falling out if you don't have it glued down well. One final step, let's just put a little bit of glitter. Now this is supposed to be a flatter shaker, so you don't want to pack things in there too crazy. But right now it's all settled at the bottom, but we'll be able to smooth it out once we get it put back together. Okay, so now I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to adhere this back tab, catching everything in there and trapping it in there. Now what I would actually do is I would go back with some tape. This is going to be hidden, so I didn't grab my tape, but I would go back with some tape and just maybe place tape along here, just in case your glue happens to unseal itself. You want everything to stay in there. So now when we spread things out, you can see we've got a good shaker mix in there. We've got some butterflies and some hearts, all kinds of stuff. So that's our full panel shaker. We just made the shaker. And you could just assemble a whole bunch of those, just, you know, sit with your supplies and make a bunch of those so you've got these ready for card making. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and apply this little frame around. And this isn't trapping anything in, so I don't have to be so concerned about gluing. This is just a decorative element. Nothing's depending on the glue holding firm. So we're just going to kind of sporadically add glue. And then I'm going to flip this over, and this goes edge to edge. Now you can recreate this with any sort of layer die like this. Now that you know how to make the panel, you'll just look for dies or cut with your silhouette. Basically just a card frame. That's all this is. It's just a card-sized frame, and you just add it on top. So now we've got our pretty little shaker window behind. And then I've cut out some little flowers. I did go ahead and put the flower centers on beforehand because I have a problem where I lose my flower centers like immediately after they're cut. I don't know what happens, but immediately after I peel them off the mat, they just like disappear and vanish. So I tend to pull them off the mat, put them right on the flower that they're intended. And I'm just gonna add some bits of glue and tuck these in here and there. And these dainty little flowers are cut from pink vellum. All right, next we're going to adhere this to our card base. So right now it's just a solid piece, a little pocket. So let's go ahead and get this adhered to our card base. And this is going to cover up all the back too. Now we're going to finish this off with a sentiment. So I've cut hello from our rose gold mirror foil. And I'm just going to add that here at the bottom, kind of angled like that. Okay, and now we are done. We've got our little shaker card with our vellum window. That's idea number 4, making shaker cards with vellum. Now let's move on to our final idea. Last, but definitely not least, our final idea is to use vellum for little peekaboo windows. So I've cut a little grid pattern here of butterflies, and then I've cut 3 strips of vellum in 3 different colors, 2 different shades of pink and a shade of red. So I'm just going to go ahead and mount these colored strips on the back here. When I flip this over, you'll see then they just show through just where the cutouts are. So let's go ahead and get these adhered down for step number 1. All right, so I'm going to press that down just like that. Next, we're going to go with the medium. So we've got light, and then medium pink, and then we'll finish off with red. Okay, so on the back, you're just seeing panels, but when you flip it over, you've got the translucent vellum. And when you pop it off the card, you'll be able to see that it gives that cool, like layered, shadowy look. Now I'm going to take this one step farther. I'm going to build some little squares of foam taper on here, and I'm going to turn some of these into shakers, just a few of them. I just want to make my peekaboo windows, a couple of them extra special. So I'm going to use some foam strips, and I'm making sure that if wherever I'm putting the foam, if you can see where it butts up and meets here, I am making sure that that is really tightly, the joint is tight together, because the worst thing is when you shake it and your glitter goes flying everywhere. So I'm going to prevent that by making sure my foam is nice and tight in there. But basically the foam is going to act as the little container for the shaker. Okay, so we've got 3 little windows there, and we're going to put some shaker stuff in them. I think I'll do just a bit of glitter in each one. And then let's put just a few seed beads in each one because I want to get that shaky noise. Okay. Now I've got a panel that's exactly the same size as this panel. They're identical. And so I'm going to layer this. This is going to become the back of my shaker window. So I'm going to ever so carefully peel up my foam tape. You want to leave that foam tape on while you're pouring things in there so that it doesn't stick. And then you have to be very careful that you don't jostle it while you're peeling it, or else your glitter will just stick to your foam tape and you won't get a good seal. All right, and then I'm going to ever so carefully place this back panel lined up, push it down all the way around. Make sure where those places where the foam tape is, I'm getting a good seal. And then we're going to flip it over and test our shake, and everything seems to be good. So we've got 3 little shaker windows in there. Now let's do one more step. Let's add some little butterfly pop-ups. So again, I've just cut these out of the same color of vellum, and they'll just kind of pop up off of the card on the front. Once it dries, I will go back and fold the wings a little bit more, but I want to make sure it adheres first. I'm just picking random windows to add these to. And again, once those fully dry, I'll go back and pop up the wings a little bit more. Okay, so that's that. Now let's go ahead and adhere this to our card base. Because right now it's just a flat piece. I'll pop my butterflies up just a little bit. Okay. All right, so now we've got a shaker and little popped up vellum butterflies. Let's finish it off with our sentiment. So I've got Hello Sunshine for my little sentiment here at the bottom. This is a card that design team member Kate made, and you can see she did the same kind of thing where she created a little background scene behind her little vellum peekaboo window with die cuts. And it's kind of the same effect where she's just creating peekaboo windows. All right, I've gone ahead and glued on my little hello sentiment. Now I'm just adding some little gems to the center of my popped up butterflies, just as a little finishing touch. And that is idea number 5 for using vellum. So let's go ahead and bring all the cards back in. We've got peekaboo layers, we've got shaker elements and full panel shakers. We've got embossing and coloring. We've got die cut layering, just using them as basic die cuts and with that cool watercolor technique. And then we've got using it to make pattern papers more subtle, kind of as a layer to help soften your cards. So that is 5 different ideas for using vellum. I hope this has inspired you to grab some vellum. You can grab a variety pack and get all the colors, or just grab white and try some of these techniques. It's a lot of fun to play around with, and actually it's inexpensive and it will last you a long time because you tend to use it in little pieces here and there rather than full card. Be sure to like this video and subscribe to 12 by 12 Cardstock Shop for more great tutorials. I'll put all the supplies in the description so you can find any of these items that you're looking for. Thanks for watching.